Welcome everybody to our new installment of Open Books. I'm Cynthia Sears, and our special guest today is MJ Linford, who has been a book artist for 40 years, over 40 years. I think she started when she was 3 or 4 years old, pretty much. I am going to be very brief about this because MJ has so much to share. She is the consummate pop-up book artist, I believe, as well as other movable forms. She is head of the book arts at Barn, which is lucky for all of us because it means we can take advantage of her wonderful teaching skills and we don't have to go back to 5th grade to do it. So we can be semi-adults. And she has been an inspiration to all of us who love book arts and movable forms and both serious and lighthearted subjects. So I turn this session over to MJ Linford.
Thank you, Cynthia. Well, as Cynthia said, my name is MJ. It's actually Mary Jean Linford, and I do sign my books by my full name, but everybody knows me as MJ. And I know when somebody calls me Mary Jean, it's usually the feds, right? I say that because I used to work in a program that had Title 20 funds, and that was the only time anybody ever called me Mary Jean. I do make pop-up books. I also make other types of books, and as Cynthia said, I teach as well. And one of the things that started me off in the pop-up book realm was a Julie Chen class. And I don't know how many of you are familiar with Julie Chen's work. She taught a series of classes called A Big Book of Fun and Games. And that was one that I took. And actually, it was at the University of Washington, and I was there under false pretenses. I was pretending to be a different teacher because the class had filled, and one of my friends wasn't able to make it, and so she said, just go as me because there's a waiting list. And so I did have the opportunity to go to that, and my head just exploded right then and there. I fell in love with pop-up books of all different kinds, and I have never looked back. It was just a lot of fun. And in fact, what happened from that class was that I also started teaching that. Once I got a few pop-up books under my belt, I was able to start a program at Sakai Intermediate School teaching how to make pop-up books. And during that, it's a little random sort of thinking, but this one is yours, by the way.
Okay.
I developed a manual. This is the size of the book that the students made, and this is one that I made as a teaching tool. And this one is called Journey to the Mysteries. And so this was a one-of-a-kind. And these were some of the structures that we were able to show the kids. Mm-hmm. And one of the reasons that I liked this book was the whole idea of printing on vellum so that you could see the background through. And then this is a self-opening flip book. And then this is a Volval. It's a little turn. This is one of the oldest movable structures that there is. And it's shown up in very, very old books. And I'll have something to show you about that too. These are all the dogs No, I just... Never mind.
She's really a dog lover.
No, I'm not. I believe there's a book in this collection somewhere called No Dog, No.
Yes.
And the idea of playing around with the text and the form of the text to kind of show how it's broken. And with this, then, I wrote a book called Making Amazing Books. And it's not commercially available. It really goes from the start of brainstorming, etc. It's really intended as a workbook. And then it goes through and it shows you how to make all of the different forms. And then the forms are copyable onto paper or cardstock at home or on your printer. And if you're interested in this, you can leave me your email address and I'll send you the file for it. It's a PDF file, and you're welcome to it. I was originally going to think about publishing it, but then I thought that means trying to find an agent and trying to find a publisher and da-da-da-da-da-da. Changing the format, so there were a lot of pretty pictures, probably not as useful, so now I just say, you can have it. Just give me your email address and that's cool. So this is really kind of where I did my sort of meat and potatoes pop-ups and learned a lot about pop-ups. Because one of the things that I did with students was I said, we have 16 possible pop-up styles, and they're pop-up and movable structures, and they're in this workbook. And if those don't meet what you need to do, then please let me know and we'll work that out together. And so in the process of doing that, I had kids that said, well, I want to do a pirate ship, and you don't have a pirate ship in there. Or, you know, I want to do a street, the main street in Kingston. That was tricky, doing the main street in Kingston, because he wanted all the buildings on both sides, and then the trees behind it. And I'm looking at him thinking, are you sure you want to do this? And then I had somebody who wanted to do a military jeep, but he wanted the actual military jeep to pop up off the page. So I learned a lot about pop-up books, and I will say that one of the books that I found most useful was this book right here. So I'm kind of getting my reference stuff out of the way here real quick, and then I'll show you some pop-up books. This is, if you could only buy one book about pop-ups, this would be it. Because this is not it's not a look at every page and go, ooh, ah, and then some sort of short little tiny description. This is, he started out, he's used just pretty much all of his pop-up styles. This is by David Carter. And here, there's a glossary of all of the different things that you can do. Or not glossary. It is a glossary of terms. But then each and every pop-up style has a page that opens up and shows you exactly what it looks like. And then it also has views of the inside, right? So you can see how that's put together. And it goes from all different kinds of pop-up styles, and then it keeps moving on to compound styles. Then it starts to go, here's another compound style. Then it moves on to these guys here, which are these are not true pop-ups, they're movables. Okay. And it's a great book because, for example, on these movables, you can open it up and take a look at the guts, right? So it's a very, very good book for learning how to do all of this stuff. And then in the back, it talks about how to do various things. Now, the cooler part of this that I think is most useful is that if you go to David Carter's website, he has all of these pop-up structures as printable, cut out, and make it yourself. So all the patterns are there, and all you have to do is print it on cardstock and make it. And so if you were only going to buy one book, this would be my recommendation, because it not only gives you all the different styles, it also gives them proper name for what they all are. So you can say, okay, I want to make a tent, or I want to make a cylinder pop up, or things like that. So that is an awfully nice book, and later on you guys can take a look at that. So the other class that I took, and as I said, the Julie Chang class just exploded my mind. And I think I took it from her again. And then I became a Julie Chenite and took all these classes from her and even flew to San Francisco because she's really an amazing teacher. But her pop-up book, she doesn't make her pop-up books like these guys, she doesn't sell those as far as I can tell. And I don't think she thinks that that's a particularly serious, it doesn't have seriousness of purpose. And seriousness of purpose usually is as far away from my style as it can get. So, but then I did take a class from Sean Sheehy. And this is one of Sean's books. His work is amazing. This is his Book of Flowers. And what I found interesting in this guy was just the use of the solid colors of cardstock. And by using that, he's able to get the idea across really quite nicely. Even my style tends to be a fully illustrated page. His has, you know, just very simple forms. These are really cool. And what is interesting is I took a class from him in Salt Lake City, and he was talking about, somebody said, "You cut all those out by hand? How on earth do you do that?" And he said, "No, I don't cut it by hand. I use a cutter." And plotter cutter. And I thought, okay, yeah. Julie Chen's got one of those. It's a couple of $1,000s. $5,000 or so. I can't afford one of those. And she said, "Really? How much did it cost?" And he said, "Well, I think at the time it was about $900. And my ears just went, what? What's it called? And I discovered this plotter cutter that's called a Craft Robo Pro, and it allows you to cut out multiple. It doesn't shorten the process at all. What it does is make you spend more time on the computer digitizing things than it does cutting them out. I could probably, make the things by the time I finish that. But what it does allow me to do is to have everything be very exact and very precise about the placement on the page and everything. And what I found was that when you go on Sean's website, you can get all the patterns for the things that he does in his workshop. And then he also had all of the Craft Robo Pro patterns for this. And I thought, and I'm sure he doesn't intend for everybody to go out and make one of these books, but I did. So I have my own little sample of this book, although his is far more wonderful than mine.
MJ, are you familiar with a scan and cut?
I got my plotter cutter, I think it was probably 6 or 7 years ago, and it's still running strong, by the way. It is a good product. But they've come out the Cry-Cut now, where you can actually program it into your computer, and a lot of the smaller, the companies that were doing some of those automatic cutout things where you bought the cassette and you plugged it in and you could print an alphabet thing out. They're now more controlled by computers, so any of those work. As long as you can digitize the file on your computer and put it into the cutter, you've got as good as it gets, right? Now, my Craft Robo, I've had, like I said, at least 6 or 7 years, and it's still going strong, so I don't have any reason to replace it. But I think if I was going to replace it, I would just get another of the same, because they're really good cutters. And I do understand it, and I use Illustrator, Adobe Illustrator, for the process of digitizing the files, and I have to tell you, that is a steep learning curve. So, I learned it, but it was really a painful process. So, let's see. So that was the Sean Sheehy one. And then what we did, that's his book, what we did in the class was he basically took you through, and it was the mechanics of movables, and he started it out from just a swinging disc, and then having it turn on the page, and a lot of different movables, etc. And he handed us these as patterns, and basically had us move one by one through these guys and do them. And
Oh.
This was when we got to the end, he had us do a composite. Oh, this is one of my favorites. Oh, sorry. See how they go in different directions? Oh, you have to work it for yourself because obviously I can't hold it up and work at the same time. So anyway, so go ahead and take a look at this later on. But at the very end, then he turned us loose for about an hour or so and had us do where is it? Well, he had us do a, oh, maybe it was this one. Maybe I didn't put it in because I didn't like it.
Great.
So, when I took the class from Shanxi, and we're really hoping that we can get him up here, either in the latter part of August or in September to do a workshop, and hopefully a talk at Barn, at BEMA, he demystified the paper engineering for pop-up books for me. And he took us through so much, and as he worked on it, he really helped everybody understand the engineering behind what we were doing. So what I found after that was it's taken me fewer and fewer models to put together a pop-up book. So for example, this is my latest pop-up book. This is called The Well-Dressed Bird. These guys out of the way. I found this paper online and I fell in love with it. It's a paper from Nepal, and it was particularly attractive to me because of the surface decoration, but also because a friend of mine had just come back from Nepal, and she was there during that really bad earthquake. So this is called The Well-Dressed Bird. And yeah, and this was one where I decided to use the paper to kind of be the decoration and not to do any other kind of embellishment on the page because I had fallen in love with this paper. This was for a show at Bainbridge Arts and Crafts Gallery, and the show title was Birds and Bees. And I'm willing to walk down pretty much any road. But somehow, inspiration for the birds and the bees wasn't coming there. I didn't want to do something super racy or anything like that. So I thought, well, I'm just going to do birds. So this is The Well-Dressed Bird. As you can tell, I bought a lot of the paper in order to get enough to do these things. This guy here I'm going to need to come in and fiddle with. The hummingbird. And as you can see, this paper just makes this book.
What weight was it? Is it kind of a cardstock?
Yeah, it's kind of, yeah, go ahead and feel the, it's a little bit heavier than a cardstock.
Yeah, so it's kind of heavy.
But it's soft. That's one of the problems with it, is that it is soft. Okay, this is an eggshell structure. This was a lot of fun to play around. This was interesting to cut out, that's for sure. And I did not use the cutter on this. The cutter would have destroyed the paper because it's so soft. It really needs a nice hard cardstock. And this book, I will say I only had to do, with the exception of the bird cage, of course, I only had to do one model for each of the pages, and they just fell together. And what that told me is that I'm really starting to fundamentally understand how to make a pop-up book. And I'm going to show you a couple of others. This was one of my early pieces. It's MJ's Big Book of Deadly Sins. So you can see that this is, I'm willing to go there, but not birds and bees. This is, and this was an early pop-up book. And at this point, I was very interested in doing a lot of research about the 7 deadly sins. So by the time I got into the research for the deadly sins, then it started pointing to other areas, because apparently there was a house for a house and a sign for every single deadly sin. So this one is the Virgo sign. And it has a number. This is 8, etc. And it's the first house. So as I continued doing this, by the time I finished with all the research, I had this whiteboard in my studio this big, and I had to grid it off, and I had the deadly sins going down here, and then I had the house, and then the numbers, and it was just this big grid. I haven't done that kind of research for a pop-up book since. This is a little BB game to get the bullets or the BBs into the heart, right? And then it has the definition of the deadly sin. This one is avarice. And it says, I want what everyone else wants. I don't want much. I just want what is owed to me. Everyone else gets rich, why shouldn't I? Everyone else gets promoted, why not me? I'm just trying to make an honest buck. Really, honestly. And then it's a dollar coin there. Oh, and a penny saved is a penny earned. Make hay while the sun shines. Go for the gold and grab the brass ring. And I think that it's interesting that avarice, I believe, is now unfortunately running a lot more people's lives than we really want. This is envy. Envy was a tough one to come up with. A little plastic snake here. So this is Penny Perfect's. Penelope Nearly Perfect, her resume. She works for Penny Systems Corporation, software development for the home. She worked at Microsoft Corporation. She graduated from Harvard, Yale, and Swarthmore. She volunteers for United Way, Ritzville Soccer Club, Girl Scouts of America, and Ritzville Art Museum. And her hobbies are swimming, jogging, scrapbooking, and cordon bleu chef. So, you know, she's kind of... And this one is greed. And this is a lottery ticket, and there's a fire hatchet here to break the plastic. And a couple of times people have said, well, what do you mean? Why is a lottery ticket greed? And I just say, that is what prompts us to buy lottery tickets, is greed. That's all there is to it. Here is lust. I gotta get this out right here for a second. So this guy is one of these pull-out seams. I love that photograph. I've had that photograph for so long, and I was just waiting for something perfect to use it for. This one is pride. Now, pride is an interesting thing, because pride used to be a deadly sin. But lately, pride has become a virtue. You take pride in the work that you do. You are proud to be an American. Those kinds of things. So is it a sin, or is it a virtue? So we have it as the sin, conceited, arrogant, self-important, and egotistic. And we have it as a virtue. Self-respect, laudable, flourishing, splendid. So that's one of those where you really have to kind of think, well, which side of the fence do I fall on? And it's probably both. This one is sloth. This one has personal significance to me because these are pictures of my house. Oh, this needs to be worked out again. This is kind of embarrassing a little bit. Please excuse the mess.
That could be anyone's message.
I know, but I admit it. It was mine.
Big ownership.
Yeah. Since that time, I've gotten rid of half of my belongings. And you know something? Doesn't that sound like it would be the way to just not have that kind of a mess? No. They just spread themselves, the belongings you have spread themselves out. You know, I swear there's little gremlins in the house. And then there's the title page with the information about where the quotations come from, etc. So
How was that printed?
that was this. This is printed on an inkjet printer.
Mhm.
Yes, but first I went through, and it's stenciled, etc. The museum has the original version. This is a, do you know where that is? Seven Deadly Sins? Actually, I think it's up somewhere. It's in one of the cupboards, or in one of the display things.
We can find it easy as pie.
It's up here.
Amy has alphabetized.
If you look at the two, you can see that this, I scanned the original. I didn't have a copy for myself, and this is my copy. But if you take a look at the actual original, and this is invariably the case for me, is that I end up without a copy of my work. So now I've started doing two of everything. That way, at least after I've turned one in for a show, I have a copy backup. But a lot of the early works that they have in the museum, like the Journey to the Mysteries, etc., I don't have a copy of. So Cynthia really has the original. And this was the original, and this one was, this is stenciled and rubber stamped, and so you can actually see the difference between the two in terms of the pages. Oh, and my Penelope Perfect is missing Penny's photograph.
Oh.
Doesn't she just
Oh,
look
she-
so perfect?
Yeah.
She's never had to diet a day in her life. Yeah. Anyway, so you can kind of see. And not only that, apparently, they're in a different order than mine. So, okay, I'm going to hand this back to you so that it doesn't get mixed up with mine. Then one of the other pieces that I did was a weird soup. So what happens is, invariably, I get a call from Bainbridge Arts and Crafts Gallery, and they say, we're having a show on blah, 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 and do you think you could have some work for it? And so I say yes, because it's usually 6 to 8 months beforehand. And I write it down in my calendar, and I start doing some brainstorming. And pop-up books are not an immediate form. First, you have to come up with the concept. And then you need to determine whether or not that concept is actually going to work. And that's where you start making models. And then you finally do the final copy, and that's where you discover all of the little idiosyncrasies that didn't show up before that somehow just don't work in the final copy. So you have to continually make more and more of them. And it's kind of a big paper waster in that sense. So, and invariably, I have just enough time to make one copy, get it to Bainbridge Arts and Crafts, usually just before the deadline, occasionally a day afterward, and it goes on display, and then it gets sold, and then I don't have it, and so I don't have a way of making a copy of it unless I've already done that. So I'm getting better at figuring this out, and this is a copy of a book that's on display over there. This is Weird Superheroes, and the show at Bainbridge Arts and Crafts Gallery was superheroes, so I thought, okay, I can do superheroes. And so I said yes, and then when it got to the point where I needed to actually think through making superheroes, I realized, A, I don't really know anything about superheroes, and B, The reason I don't know anything about superheroes is because I don't really care about superheroes. But they thought it would be a really cool book. And their thinking process in inviting me to shows is, they don't explain that, all right? They just say, we think that you'd be good for this show. For example, they were doing a show on dogs. And they called me up and said, will you make us something for the show on dogs? And I said, well, sure, but you do understand that I don't like dogs at all. And they said, I know, that's why we asked you. And that's where No Dog No came from, was the show on dogs. So I'm waiting for them to do the show on cats because I've got a No Cats No in the hopper. So basically what I did was start doing some research because I knew absolutely not one darn thing about superheroes, and I discovered that there are a whole bunch of just plain bizarre superheroes. I mean, they're weird superheroes. And they were actually, and I didn't make them up, they actually showed up in a comic book somewhere. This one, Jubilee, showed up in a Marvel comic book in 1969. She can shoot bright bursts of fireworks from her fingertips. So I wrote up a little bio for her. Made homeless in her teens, she survived by giving demonstrations of her mutant plasmoid powers for the spare change. She's extremely popular during the holiday season. However, her actions have become increasingly constrained by legislation restricting the use of pyrotechnics to professionals due to safety issues caused by amateur use of illegal fireworks. So here we have Jubilee. And that is actually the comic book picture of Jubilee. Okay, so that's her. Here we have Infectious Lass. Infectious Lass was a DC Comics character in 1963, and she is super contagious. Infectious Lass possesses the dastardly ability to quickly spread germs. Imagine being in the middle of a nefarious crime only to fall prey to the flu. Of course, since most kindergarten children have the same superpower, Infectious Lass has been forced to seek part-time employment in the medical field as a consultant for drug trials.
Oh, wonderful.
This is Hindsight Lad. This is a Marvel character from 2005. Hindsight Lad has the ability we all have wished for many times in our lives. Who wouldn't want to know how things might have turned out had they made a different decision? Trouble is, he can't change the past. He only knows what could have happened. He's currently receiving therapy for the emotional and financial stress caused by having teenage children. And he has a little wheel,
Oh.
and you spin it. I'm supposed to spin a little better than that. You spin it, and it tells you your other choice was a better one. You would have bettered your job. Others would have betrayed you. You would have been honored. You would have lost the lottery. You would have won the lottery, depending on what your decision was. Okay, and then this is what's called a dos-a-do. So it has one side, and then when you close it, and you open up the back side. This guy here is Cypher. Marvel, 1984. Picture the scenario. A middle-aged couple from Dubuque is visiting France or Belgium or Italy or Japan. The country isn't important. They didn't take the precaution of learning a few important phrases before they left. Now they need to use the facilities and no one speaks English. Clearly, this must be a job for Cypher, saving the world one bathroom at a time. And then this little wheel tells you how to ask for where the bathroom is in all different languages. So if you pull it out, and turn it, this is Portuguese. The flag here tells you where is, and then Swedish, it's var är toaliten, or something like that, I don't know. I don't speak Swedish, so it's a good thing that guy's around. And the last one is Rainbow Girl. Rainbow Girl has the ability to wield the powers of the mysterious emotional spectrum, resulting in unpredictable mood swings, a long-winded way of describing PMS. Like a chameleon, Rainbow Girl's emotions change depending on the colors by which she is surrounded. She is currently under investigation by several pharmaceutical companies for antidepressant medication patent violations. And when you put the glasses on, they're the kind of glasses that give you sort of the rainbow effect around all the lights. Okay. So those are there, you can take those out of there. And that's superpowers. So actually, now, I kind of think superheroes kind of cool. At least the weird ones. Because I gotta tell you, there was a list of about 40 weird superheroes that I chose from. There are more. There are more. This was a book I did several years ago, and I did in 1910. I'm in here, but I did do this about Bainbridge a few years ago. This is Bainbridge ABC. This was for a show at Bainbridge Arts and Crafts Gallery. And this is all pochoired, hand pochoired. Pochoir. You take a stamp pad with color, a colored stamp pad, and not the kind of stamp pads that you use when you are doing office work, you know, those Sanford or whatever they are, stamp pads.
Pochard spelled.
Pochoir, Pochoir. It's basically, it's a stenciling technique, but I kind of use it to just tone the paper as well as do stencils. And this guy here, and what you do with that, the stamp pad, you get good stamp pads like Color Box or, you know, pigment stamp pads, and you use a stencil brush and you just rub the top of this stamp pad, and then you just kind of go in swirlies on the paper, and it tones this. All of this started out as white paper. Wow. I get past bridge.
Oh, gosh.
Cutter. This was done by a cutter. You can imagine me doing this. And then she has no sight left. Frog Rock. It was fun trying to figure out the whole alphabet on Bainbridge Island, you know. So some of them, it was easy. Frog Rock, F, you know. Could have been Ferncliff, it could have been anything. But then there were other ones like Y and Q that were tricky.
Oh, I like that one.
So this is Grange Hall and Helpline House. This is the Internment, Japanese Americans in Kura Road. And this is an actual, not the real letter, but it is a letter that was written from one of the interned people to Mr. Sakamoto, who was the regional person in charge, I guess. Anyways, talking about how difficult it was to be doing this kind of relocation. This is a stamp that was from the time. And then this is a copy of the Bainbridge Island poster of the internment. And Bainbridge Island was the first community to be interned, the first community to be split up like that, and the Japanese Americans to be interned. And that it was felt that Bainbridge Island was a good choice to be the first one because the community got along so well together. Which seems to me sort of an oxymoron, you know? Gosh, they're getting along really well, and let's just take half of them and move them away. And so there were lots of businesses that just didn't have anybody to care for them. Junko with the gardens, it just went to rack and ruin after he left. And now over on, that's Miller, that's the original site of the gardens that his son actually, that Junko actually restored It was his father's that left. This is the library and New Brooklyn Road, Bainbridge Island Library, and these are the Michelle Van Slyke hands that are on the back of there's a screen so that they have their monitor in front of it and you don't see all the wires and stuff like that. So that's what that's all about. Oddfellows Hall, Port Madison, and Quail Hill Road. There's your cue. I had to use a telephone book for that one.
Oh.
Rolling Bay, Strawberry Farms, Town and Country Market. Okay, come on now. This one likes to have a little bit of tweaking in it. This is Upper Farms Road, Vineyards, and Washington State Ferry. And you can well imagine that this was done by the cutter. Because could you see me doing all those little windows? And then this is Excellent Schools,
Yeah, nice word.
Yomal Cabin, and Zip Codes, because we have 2 on Baybridge. So that is the book and this is a pretty expensive book. This is, I think it's $1,600. And so at that point I thought, all right, I'd like to make something littler, something that's a little bit more saleable. So I started making these guys, and this is a mini Bainbridge Island ABC. So when you open it up, it's an itty bitty book. Has a Vauvel on the title page. Then still has the bridge, simplified. It has Frog Rock. It has Strawberry Fields. And yes, you might notice that there is a similarity here.
Yes.
My only real theft.
Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Sean. And Port Madison, the Grange, and the ferry. So that was kind of fun to do, and I made several of these, and I think the museum has one too. Now, people ask me, how do you do this? How do you come up with these ideas? And I have to say, I'm not really sure. Sometimes I start working on things and just an idea comes to me. And I was teaching a pop-up book class to adults. And as I was teaching, I was making the structures to show people how to do them. And I was making my own at the same time. And that's where this book came from. This is not a humorous piece. This is a little more serious. This one has a self-opening flip book, and the poetry is crouched low, surrounded by the dark and frozen in place. I'm good at reading upside down, but not that good. My heartbeat pulses in my ears, my throat, my fingers. I can smell my terror, and so perhaps can he. I taste the marinade of coppery blood, mixed with the salt of my tears and laced with fear. It is the flavor of hate, his and mine. I have the kind of timeline thing. Just as an aside, I discovered this great stuff called Punchinello, and it's the strips of mylar that they make sequins from, and so they punch out the sequins, and then they roll this stuff up and sell it as a decorative thing too. Makes a great stencil, I love it. Satin and lace. Not so long ago, I was captivated by a dream. I did not know that I was baptized by the font of flames and married in the house of pain. I could not know. You can see that there's flames that you can see through the window. And when you open the door, I think when you open the door, here we go. It says, "Enter all ye who would know illusion from reality." So you have the door with that sitting in it. Now my captive heart is torn apart, sliced through with jagged edges. Nothing can bind it tight enough to mend. It starts out as a broken heart, and then it has Band-Aids. And they're real Band-Aids. I wrap my arms around my body so tightly that I can feel my heart beat in them. This is not who I am, a small voice keeps repeating, like a mantra. And yet I am here, sitting as still as a stone flung to the ground. This has been closed away for a while. These pop-up books like to be opened regularly. And it says, he cried and told me he was sorry, that it would never happen again. I believed him. Holding myself together to keep from breaking apart like glass, like a bottle flung through a window. My arms so tight that I'm cocooned by them. I tuck my head down so I cannot be seen, be distinguished from the other shapes in the garden. I am afraid to move, to upset the delicate balance I have achieved here on the edge. I will not be found here. I wait silently for the moment when I can be reborn. And you have the cocoons there. So this is a little bit more serious side of me. It's a topic that I find that is a really important topic for me. I actually have a family member who was the victim of emotional abuse and headed toward physical abuse. And fortunately, we were able to intervene and get this person out of that situation. But we should all be really aware that this occurs. Now I'm just going to random. In case this wasn't random enough for you, I'm going to be even more random. When I went to the Movable Book Society's conference when it was in Portland, and I won an award for one of my books, and what I won, which I still cannot believe this, is, take it out of the box here. Thank you. Gorgeous box, by the way. This is a history of pop-ups. And you have in the front, you have, this is the first Vauvel. And as you go through the book, and I'll leave it for you to look at, but please, please, please be very careful, because this is a treasure for me. And so it starts out with some of the very beginning pop-up styles and whatnot. And love that lifting the ribbon. I think that's totally cool. I also like how it says, lift ribbon. This is a Meggendorfer. And every year they give the Meggendorfer Prize. I searched high and low for these little black rivets, so that I could use something like this. And after I found a workaround for it, I found out the person who actually has them. Cool thing about this is when you flip it over, you see the mechanism on the back. So you can kind of go through all of this. Where's one of my favorites in here? Oh, here's the, no. I don't think I can show it to you. Is that not the coolest? I just keep waiting for the book I'm going to use that one in. So that's here to take a look at. But that was really a wonderful gift, and it also inspired me to do a little bit of research in pop-up books themselves. I've shown everything I got there, right? Yep, okay. Now, one of the things I will say too is that when you're in, how are we doing for time, by the way? Good, that's time just right. I make pop-up books, and on every single page there's a pop-up, and usually a different pop-up. And so I have gone through, I mean, my library of pop-up books is huge. It's really, I have a ton. And generally speaking, if it's a pop-up book that I find there are structures in there that I would like to see and figure out how to do them, I buy 2 copies. One that stays pristine and one that I just take apart. Because while it's really important to get, well, I think it was really important to take that Sean Sheehy class, and I really believe that's probably what turned my head into paper engineering as opposed to just try it and see if it'll work. There's something to be said for that $19, 1995 pop-up book of like a Robert Sabuda book of the Winter ABC, Christmas ABCs or something like that, to just take it apart and learn from it, you know, trace it, the parts, and then put it together and see if you did it right. So, as well as this, I certainly would say that if you are interested in making pop-up books, that's a great way to start. And you can't beat a $20 class, and that's what these become. It's really kind of a $20 class. However, if Robert Sabuda comes, I mean not Robert Sabuda, but if Sean Sheehy comes, I will expect to see you all there because he's the best. So I also actually do pop-up books in other situations. This was a piece that, well, they're not, I do books that have interesting structures. This is a piece called Word Search, and it looks like this, and the center, this is a Hetty Kyle structure, and it stands like this when it's cooperating. And this one is a book, this one is about word play, and it is actually has a deeper meaning than that. It says, we sit together in the waning light of day, you engrossed in your word search puzzle, me struggling with a word search of my own. Not a puzzle exactly, more like a riddle that needs solving. Searching memories of long ago, trying to remember a moment or a touch that will bring back your name. We have been together for so many years. You sometimes completed my sentences before I even knew what I was saying. I could almost hear what you were thinking, but I no longer know you. You play word games, crossword puzzles, anagrams, Scrabble, Boggle, Hangman. You believe that they'll keep you alert, that you won't forget. But I've forgotten already. And I stare into the fading twilight, searching for the magic words that will bring me home. And then you see that the front of it is a series of, I think it's a little easier to just show it to you this way. It's a series of images that they have crossword puzzles and things in it, and as it continues, it becomes less and less visible until when you get to the end, it's not visible at all. My father had Alzheimer's, and he, through an unfortunate set of circumstances, he died before it got really bad. I mean, he still recognized us, he still had some of his memories, and I had thought about bringing a lawsuit against the people in the situation, and then I thought, it's not going to bring him back, and would he have wanted to end up not recognizing who we were? He was upset already, so this was really kind of for my dad, and hopefully not me. And then using that same sort of structure, here's this one that says Art Saves Lives. And this was a gift to people that, three other women that I work with, Full Play Press. And if you look on this side, you can see pictures of us working. And then on this side, it's a poem. We gather at the table, prepared or not. We may grumble, but we'll forgive. We delve into the work wholeheartedly, with passion, sometimes agreeing, other times wildly apart. We dissemble our boundaries, idea by idea, word by word, always cherishing our relationship, keeping it front and center. With love and respect, we move past our fences, our own drawn lines to a common voice. And so this is a structure that I got from, she had the gallery down, not Laura, but she was here.
Oh, let's see,
She was here.
Abecedarian?
Yeah. Who's- Who ran that Abecedarian?
She's coming.
Alicia Bailey.
Yes.
Alicia Bailey. This was a structure that she showed me. And I gotta tell you, after making this, I have enormous respect for her in terms of her ability to do this, because this took just this little swinging around thing. It took tons of engineering to try and figure out, to get it to move freely, to not hit on either side, to be balanced top and bottom so that it didn't sit down at the bottom and hang up down below, etc. It was a lot of work. So it's not something that, so I have a lot of respect for her now. And the 4 book that, now I also work with a group of women, Lynn Agnew, Susan Lang, Robin Rushka, and myself. We work as Full Play Press. And the 4 of us work together on our books. I don't put process notes at all of any kind with these guys. I think it's kind of self-explanatory. But for our books, we do put together a pamphlet that goes with the book, talking about what the process was in terms of how we got to the end of the book. Because when we sell these to libraries, librarians like to know that kind of stuff. So this is a book that's called Beyond Boundaries. And this is as close to pop-ups as I have been able to sneak past them. They are, I won't say who, but one person keeps saying, no, you're the pop-up artist. You know, we're not going to do pop-up books. You're the pop-up book artist. So I finally managed to get them to at least consider this. And this is a book about going beyond boundaries. So each has a poem. So here's the structure, and then here's the poem for that, and the poem for this one. Whoops, there's a back page there. I love that one. And then there's more. Somebody once said, in our collaborative work, they can always tell which is mine. And I have been working to kind of erase that footprint a little bit. We very definitely want our books to be a collaborative effort and not just be Lynn's work, Robin's work, Susan's work, and my work. So we've been working pretty hard at that. And it is an interesting experience to work collaboratively. There are 2 of us in the group. Know what we should be doing. You know, I mean, we know what we should be doing, and this is the kind of book we should make, and this is probably, you know, this is how we're going to do it. And the other 2 are more organic and would like to not have that decision made before they get started. And so it's been kind of fun to work within that sort of craziness of, okay, I'll keep my mouth shut and we're just going to work through it. So that's been a lot of fun.